I think we have understood for a long time the problems that our country is facing, but what I want to talk about today is where we're actually going. My parents came to this country in the late 1970s, in my dad's case, the early 1980s, in my mom's case, with literally no money in their pocket. In a single generation, I have gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies, doing it while marrying my wife Apurva, raising our 2 sons, following our faith in God. That's the American dream. And I am genuinely worried that that American dream will not exist for my 2 sons and their generation unless we, all of us here, step up to actually do something about it. For a long time, we as conservatives, we have been, and I'm not blaming anybody else here but myself. For those of you who have read my 3 books for the last few years, it's about identifying the problem. We've been identifying the problem. We've been running from something. Now is our moment to actually start running to something. To our vision of what it means to be an American. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're in the middle of a national identity crisis today. And I tell you this speaking as a member of my generation. I'm 38 years old. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. And I will tell you this speaking from that position. We are hungry for a cause. We are starved for purpose and meaning and identity. At a time in our national history when the things that used to fill that void, faith, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. And that leaves a black hole, a moral vacuum in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. It almost doesn't actually matter what the poison is. We obsess over that. Myself, over the last 3 years, we can fall into the trap of obsessing over that too much. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, globalism, depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. It's not an accident that we see the rise of these same poisons at the same time in our national history. Think about it. Do you think that's a coincidence? That we see the rise of these different secular religions and cults right at the same time in these last few years in American history? It is not. It is a symptom of a deeper void of purpose in our country. And I think this is our opportunity as conservatives, as Americans, to now level up. To say we're not just going to criticize the poison, right? The left will fill that vacuum with their vision of race, gender, sexuality, climate. We can't fall into the trap of just saying, hey, here's all the reasons why that's wrong, although there's plenty of room to do that. We've done that. Now is our moment to actually run towards a vision of our own. So if they're serving up to our kids race, gender, sexuality, and climate, I want us talking more about the value of each individual, the family, the nation, God. Individual, family, nation, God, that beats race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to actually stand up for something. That's the real truth of the matter. This is our moment. Do we have it in us to actually not just stand against, but to stand for? There's an old expression, actually. If there's a hole the size of God in your heart and God does not fill it, something else will instead. I think the same can be said of belief in a nation. You don't pledge allegiance to that flag, you're going to pledge allegiance to something. That's what's going on in the country. This is the stuff of Scripture. Book of Exodus. When the Israelites escaped from the Pharaoh, they're lost in the wilderness. They cannot find yet the promised land. What do? They say they want to go back and be ruled by the Pharaoh. See, we're going to bend the knee to something. It might as well be the real thing. And my job as the next president, if you all put me there, is to fill that hole with what a U.S. president can. A vision of our national identity. What it means to be an American. You ask somebody my age that question, what does it mean to be an American? You get a blank stare in response. It's like a deer in the headlights. That is the vacuum. That is the void. So what does it mean to be American? It means we believe in the ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. The ideals of the American Revolution. Ideals like meritocracy and the pursuit of excellence. That you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That is why we will end affirmative action in every area of American life. It has been a cancer on our national soul. What does it mean to be American? It means we believe in the rule of law. You know what? That if you are like my parents, you get to come to this country legally through the front door if you want to follow the rules. Pay your taxes. They raised 2 kids, actually, both of us. My brother and I went on to found companies that help thousands of Americans. We should be open to immigrants like them. But it also means that your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why I will use our own military not to secure an invasion across somebody else's border, but to protect against the invasion on our own southern border in this country. That is what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It means we believe in a radical dream that our founding fathers had 250 years ago. A radical dream that I have as a citizen today, that the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. Not the shadow government of a deep state that actually runs the show today. I'll tell you this, if you all put me there in the White House as your next president, that's your choice, not mine. If I can't work for you for more than 8 years and collect a paycheck from the taxpayer, which I think is a good thing, then neither should any of those federal bureaucrats who were never elected that are reporting into me either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of these civil service protections. That's how you actually end the deep state. And by the way, when there are government bureaucracies, 3-letter agencies that should not exist, that have so badly abandoned their purpose that they're hollowed out husks of corruption, from the FBI to the IRS, to the ATF, to the CDC, to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, to the U.S. Department of Education. We will not just get in there and reform them around the edges, no. We will get in there and shut it down. That is what it takes to revive the integrity of a constitutional republic. You see, this is the choice we face in this primary, actually. And we did, I would say, have some banter on the basketball court earlier this week, and that's part of the health of running in a primary against good people who I respect. And, you know, I will not sit here and bash any of them. To the contrary, I respect them as patriots. I'm going to need every one of them in their role when I lead this country forward to the next level. I will need every one of you. This is not a one-person sport. Our national revival is a team sport. But we do face a choice in this primary. The choice is this. Do you want incremental reform? Or do you want revolution? I stand for the side of the American Revolution. I stand for those 1776 ideals that we need to unapologetically embrace. I care deeply about national unity. I think we are skating on thin ice as a country right now. I want to unite this country. Some people, even in our own party, many in our own party, mostly in our own party, think the way we get to national unity, good people, think the way we get there is through compromise. Through showing up at the 50-yard line, compromising, holding hands, and singing Kumbaya. I reject that vision. I think that moment, if it ever existed, has long passed. I think the way we get to national unity in this country is by being uncompromising about the ideals that unite all of us as Americans. I think the way we get to national unity is by rejecting the consensus that diversity is our strength. Our diversity is not our strength. Our strength is what unites us across that diversity. And those are some radical ideas. Free speech. The idea that you get to say whatever you want as long as I get to in return. That's a radical idea. Self-governance, the idea that we the people can be trusted to govern ourselves rather than turning it over to kings in the back of palace halls in old rural England or kings in the back of three-letter government agencies in Washington, D.C. today. That is a radical ideal. The idea that we pursue excellence without constraint, that I will achieve the maximum of my God-given potential in this nation without any man standing in my way, that is a radical ideal. So you know what, we shouldn't be afraid of that radicalism. People call me an extremist. I am an American extremist because the American experiment itself was extreme. Most of human history, it was done the other way. On the other side of the Atlantic, on the other side of 1776, for most of human history, they said we could not be trusted as the people to sort out our differences on climate change or racial injustice. No, it had to be a small group of enlightened elites. But we in America said, no, we don't do it that way. We do it through a constitutional republic where every citizen's voice and vote counts equally. That is a radical idea. The American Revolution was radical, and the way we unite this country is by reviving those radical ideals that unite us across our skin deep.